Welcome to the Revolutionaries of Wellbeing podcast. I'm founder and host, Sarah McGuinness. The Revolutionaries of Wellbeing, or ROW, is a community of wellbeing managers from organisations around the globe. At ROW, we develop you as a wellbeing leader, giving you a powerful support network, professional development, and workplace wellbeing solutions so that you can focus on giving your employees the right support at the right time. To be stronger, better, and faster at improving wellbeing in your workplace, professional development is key. These discussions on workplace wellbeing are designed to inspire, share ideas, and raise awareness of important issues we can all take action on. The interviews are recorded as part of our monthly Wellbeing Wednesday webinars. Over the next little while, we'll be exploring diversity and inclusion as part of our podcast series. This episode explores inclusive wellbeing from a sexual and gender identity perspective. When it comes to workplace wellbeing, inclusivity is important. An inclusive, diverse workplace culture fosters a sense of belonging, safety, and purpose for employees, which in turn helps to increase wellbeing and productivity. It also improves social connectedness and belonging and reduces discrimination, prejudice, and harassment. And it supports people to bring their whole selves to work. Joining us in this episode is José Taiapa from Rainbow Tech. Rainbow Tech is about accepting and valuing people in the workplace and embracing the diversity of sexual and gender identities. We'll be exploring some of the cornerstones of wellbeing from this perspective, alongside myths and barriers and actions that workplaces can take to ensure wellbeing programs are truly inclusive.
The first thing I'd like to start with is some definitions and some of the terms and terminology around sexual and gender identities, around rainbow communities. What are some of the things that we really need to have in our language when we're describing these communities?
Yeah, well, kia ora koutou katoa. Yeah, definitely. I use pronouns, as you may see on here. I have he, him, and I look at that as, I've had a long career with Air New Zealand and on long haul flights with the crew with their name badge, having a flag on there. So when a customer came on that spoke that language, it signaled to them, hey, there's someone here you can communicate with, they're going to understand you. Same thing with pronouns, having those on an email signature, for example, to identify that you were in the rainbow communities or that you supported them as an ally. And it would help people in so many different ways. There was a lady recently I heard who saw it on a colleague's email signature and was having some issues with, going through some things with her teenager's gender identity. And so saw those and then approached her and was able to have a conversation. So it signals safety and inclusion. The acronym LGBTQIA+, we see that acronym and it seems to get longer by the year, the Rainbow Mafia. But it's, each of those individually, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, they are rainbow, each is a rainbow community. So as a whole, that would be rainbow communities. So if you were trying to rattle off, the acronym, what is it? Just rainbow communities is exactly the same thing to capture everyone there. And then you may see the plus at the end. Well, would have every letter of the alphabet on there. So that just captures everyone that would identify with being in the rainbow communities. In New Zealand, we have two T's, so LGBTT, and the second T is takatapui, which I identify with here in Aotearoa, which is the equivalent as the Māori equivalent of gay. And so that's a term that you may hear or that you will hear because it's been used a lot more here in New Zealand. So yeah, it's definitely, and in those rainbow communities with that acronym, someone may identify with being one, two or more of those identities. And it's just whatever they choose as an identity, then that's their choice. It's like, Sarah, if you tune up here today, you said your name Sarah, but I thought, actually, you know what? She looks like an Amy. No, I'm going to call her Amy this whole time. No, she looks like Amy to me. I'll call her Amy. No. Sarah said to me, I'm Sarah, and regardless of how I think she looks or how I think I should address her, that is her name, and so that's what you respect and go with. Yeah, does that answer what you...
Yes, it's really helpful because I think that was one of the things in our early conversation was even for me that communities versus community, even the distinction between those two. And just in staying on that topic, you and I were just talking earlier about the new initiative I think the DHB in Wellington has brought in around the cards that people can use when they go and get their COVID vaccination that allow them to say their pronouns. And you said that you'd had a little bit of experience in talking to the person behind that.
Yeah. I spoke to a lady that was on the team that was involved in that, and there was some hesitant people in the rainbow communities around going and being vaccinated, just with past experiences with, DHB or medical environments. And, someone, for example, that's transitioned, so transgender, someone that's transitioned from the sex that they were assigned at birth, if they've transitioned and that name, that old name is a dead name to them. They've put that to rest, and so they don't want that to be used. But that's unfortunately sometimes still on their legal documentation, and so they'll turn up and maybe 15 years post transition and still being referred to as someone that is long gone. It can be really mentally difficult and really hard for those people. And so having these little cards for people to say, we know that's on our identification, but actually this is who I am, so please refer to me as that, without actually having to have a conversation, just the card. And everyone that's in those spaces are across those. And so lots of awesome little initiatives that are coming up that I see also in workplaces, just helping to help people feel more comfortable in a space and lessen those anxieties that those in the rainbow communities do come up against on the daily.
Yeah, and that's probably a good one to stay with in terms of why it's really important for us to understand that sexual and gender identities perspective. And when we're talking about wellbeing in the workplace, what is some of the stuff that you see in terms of how organisations, what they're up against or what these people are experiencing in the workplace, impacts on their wellbeing?
So actually, just on that, sex and gender. So everyone's born a sex assigned at birth. The doctor assigns it. Oh, you've had a baby boy. Oh, you've had a baby girl. Oh, you've had an intersex child. Intersex is a child that's born with ambiguous genitalia. So maybe a little baby boy that's born but has genitals that reflect that maybe of a girl. And so surgeries are done on little babies here in New Zealand. It's still a legal practice which we're trying to abolish because it's not right. And so everyone's born a sex, and then as that child grows, you form a gender identity. So a little boy may be born, but then as he grows up, he has more of a feminine identity, or he may have like a 50-50 feminine masculine identity. So there'd be a different spectrum on that with that identity, and then how that's expressed. So, may have like a 40-60, and so express that in a certain way by the way they dress or what they do. And then later on forms who you are attracted to, and who you are physically attracted to and who you're emotionally attracted to. So the difference there between sex and gender: sex you're born, gender you form. And, it's interesting how we have these gender reveal parties. I find it weird, because how would you know what someone's gender is? Like a new baby is born, you don't know that their gender identity is a girl, but straight away put into this box, this binary heteronormative, it's got to go into this box or go into this box. And it's the same thing with intersex children. Baby's born, can't be put into a box. We've got to fix the baby. We've got to put the baby into a male or female box. And so we've got to just get out of this heteronormative binary thinking, that because there's so many other people on this gender and sexuality continuum. But in a workplace, in the mahi that I'm involved with, it's Rainbow Tick was set up a number of years ago because statistics here in New Zealand were really rising around unhealthy workplaces for those in the rainbow communities as far as mental health and wellbeing was concerned. Just some stats from, last year, statistics, 6 out of 10 people that in the workplace that identify as being bisexual, their job satisfaction was very, very low. And 1 in 10 secondary children identify with being in the rainbow communities. And 2019, Otago University did a study of sex orientation and mental health, and on average, it was twice as likely that those in the rainbow communities would suffer from extreme depression or anxiety and suicidal thoughts. And so Rainbow Tick was set up to come in and, for want of a better explanation, audit New Zealand organisations to have things in place to support those in the rainbow communities there by way of their recruitment practices, just signalling this is a safe place to come and work, having policies and things in place to accommodate same-sex couples, having parental leave or transitioning in the workplace, all sorts of things. And so it really is a journey for an organisation to come on to the program. And there's never really a final destination. It's just always a continual process and program. And, I work with a lot of really big, iconic New Zealand businesses, BNZ, Countdown, Air New Zealand. We've got a huge backlog of organisations waiting to come on the program. It's really fantastic in New Zealand seeing that, we really are embracing this rainbow diversity inclusion and really realising how important it is, especially those sectors that historically have been very heteronormative. Construction companies. I've got 3 big construction companies, law firms, that for many years, you recruit you to the law firm, and on the first day, here's your dress for work guide. If you're a white female, you wear that. If you're a white male, you wear that. And there's nothing else, It's like, no. And then someone now that's coming in there, it's like, well, I'm non-binary. So non-binary doesn't identify with being male or female. Is sitting there going, well, I don't want to wear either of those, sets of clothing. What do I do? Or someone that's looking to come there, they'll be like, they won't go there because of that. And I've heard this from people that are newly into these organisations. They've gone there because they've seen that the organisation has been Rainbow Tick certified or has some sort of other thing in place that signals that they're rainbow inclusive. And so they choose to go there because of that, because they want to be in a career and in a space where they're just going to be able to turn up their whole authentic self.
Because it sounds like almost those organisations are missing out on some incredible capability and incredible thinking if people don't feel like they can apply there because they don't feel like they can be their whole selves there at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had one of my clients is an architecture firm, and the CEO said, look, it's just been such a heteronormative place for so long. We just want to change it up. We want to attract different people. We want to have a more diverse workforce because we know the benefits that come with that. And so they came onto the program and done really well, got certified very quickly just because they were already kind of had the wheels were turning. And then the CEO contacted me and said, oh my gosh, we've been getting such a different response to our recruitment ads. Wow, just all these different people that have never ever come before. And I interviewed a transgender person recently and was like, we totally want to hire them. They're fantastic. Well, we've never had that before. So once this rainbow lens is cast across everything an organisation does, it really does open up some fantastic doorways for things for that organisation.
Yeah, amazing. And that's been some of your experience, because I know your experience was you started in New Zealand, and just tell us about that.
Yeah. So I grew up in a very religious, very God-fearing parents down in the Waikato, 8 kids in my family. And so navigating who I was and figuring that out was very difficult as a young person because I didn't know anyone that was gay. I had no one in my corner. I didn't even know what gay was. And so I was trying to figure it out. And so when I kind of brought it up, I was put through conversion therapy as a young person, which was horrible. Those that I knew and loved around me were all of a sudden trying to convince me I was something that I wasn't. And so I just removed myself from, as hard as it was, from that environment and went off into the world and, thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, I'm going to be a news presenter. Neil Walker at the time was reading the 6 o'clock news. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the next Neil Walker. I went to Waikato University and anyway, was in the lunchroom one day. So I went to university, did my first year of film and television, needed a holiday job and went out to the Hamilton airport, which was a tin can at the time. And I met the cabin crew manager in the lunchroom one day. And she said to me, have you ever thought about being crew? And I said, no, never have. She said, come on to an assessment centre, which I did. And then long story short, so 26 years flying, and I found my sweet spot. I love the smell of aviation fuel. I love the long haul travel, the aircraft, the people. The people was the thing for me. And I found my sweet spot, and it was a pleasure to go to work every day. Unfortunately, I got made redundant in the first lockdown. That's okay. Found my new sweet spot. Yeah, I went to work, 20 years I was going to work every day, chicken and fish on high for 20 minutes, LA and back. It was great, loved it. But I still wasn't going. I still wasn't turning out fully myself. I would filter conversations that I had with people. I wouldn't share too much about my partner or my family situation. If I was in certain areas of the organization, like if I was in engineering hangar, I'd be very different than I would be if I was in the cabin crew lounge. Every time I went up to the flight deck, kind of blended in with the boys up there. Just really wasn't being fully myself at all. And 20 years I did that. And it's exhausting. It can get exhausting for someone to do that on the daily. Just having, you are by the end of your week, or add all that on top of what you're doing in a day, it can be a lot. And I was, 20 years in, the general manager of cabin crew was on board the aircraft one night and, general managers on board, all the crew disappear into the toilets. And I'm standing there. I didn't know her, hadn't met her before. She knew nothing about me. And so I got talking to her and I very quickly felt a real inclusiveness from her, that she was an ally. She was an ally to the rainbow communities, just in the way the language she used. She didn't assume anything about me. She didn't ask anything unnecessarily. She let me guide the conversation. And I felt really comfortable very quickly because of that. And so I opened up more to her about myself. And I said, look, I'm having a baby shortly. And, I've been to HR to try and get parental leave. And because the policy was written in the 1800s, kind of doesn't include me. But, things like that changed at Air New Zealand around policy and different things. And for the first time, and because that was all happening, I finally felt like I was there, that I was someone there, that I was seen and I was actually heard, and what I was doing there, they actually cared about it. And so, all of a sudden I started doing more. I'm like, wow, I can actually just be totally myself here. And I started turning up. I thought, what can I do? So I promoted to be flight service manager on the long haul flights in an 18-month period, which normally would take quite a several years for someone to do. I joined the recruitment team and I recruited the cabin crew for Air New Zealand and helped out with comms and global brand, just off the back of a 2-minute conversation of someone that was an ally that made me feel $1 million. And so when I go into these organizations, there's a lot to learn around stuff, and that's all important. But really what I try to help them understand is it's just that, creating those connections with people in your space or in your lives to allow them to just be themselves and turn up and not have to worry. It's not about, people in the rainbow communities don't want to be in your workplace and have a ticker tape parade every time they walk through the office, or a glitter bomb set off over them every time they walk past your desk. No, they just want to be able to turn up like you and just be able to be involved in a conversation, and that you'll understand them, they'll understand you, and get on with it and not have those anxieties or having to hide who they are for fear of discrimination in a workplace.
Such a remarkable story. I think, how a simple conversation with a leader can make such a difference. And what I really heard from that was that sense that you could come along and that you felt cared for, that it was a safe space, and that there was that sense of openness there. And so, what is it, sort of almost expanding on that in terms of leadership traits that you think are really critical in allowing people to feel like you did?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I get a new organization into my portfolio, I ask straight away to meet with their senior leadership team, and I can get a really good gauge where that organization is as far as their rainbow diversity and inclusion. And when it's a good gauge, I know that it's going to be a very comfortable process. And then when I meet the people in that organization, it makes sense that people there are a certain way because of that leadership. Whereas when it's on the other side, and it's kind of a hard grind to kind of get those leadership teams on board, it does filter through into the organization. And it does. It starts at the top and it's got to trickle down. It's got to be authentic, because we can all see through that when it's just, when we get someone on to the programs, that applies to come on to the program and says, our competitors have got the rainbow tick, we want to get it because they've got it. Well, no, that's not a good enough reason, But whereas when someone comes on and says, we really want to diversify our workplace, or we've got someone here that wants to transition and we don't know what to do. Can you help us? And that's what we do, going in and helping them. But these, it's amazing how those that are in a position, in a senior leadership team or a manager, a people leader, how that influence with someone in the rainbow communities and signaling to them that you support them can be life-changing, as it was for me. I know when New Zealand first went into the Pride Parade, which they were so resistant to do for so many years, just for a whole lot of different reasons. Finally, they went into the parade and I was walking alongside one of the execs, and before we started the parade, he's like, I'm so nervous, I've never been to anything like this. And I said, it's all good, look, just stand by me, we'll walk down Ponsonby Road. And halfway down, he turned to me and he said, this is amazing, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I can see why this is important to you. And I'm so happy that we are doing this. I'm so happy that we're finally coming to this parade, that we're going through this rainbow tick. And he goes, this is awesome. I'm really thank you for letting me come today. And hearing that from him, I was just like, wow, it was like another $1 million moment for me as an employee, that an authentic connection of support that just again made me want to just show up more and be myself. And then the ripple effect from that, from me to others in the organization, it really is an amazing thing when the leaders are leading in that way.
Yeah. And you can really hear strongly in your voice just, how important that was and what a difference that does make. We talked earlier in our conversation around that discomfort that sometimes people can feel in having these conversations. So, what are some of the barriers or the myths, or what are some of those preconceived ideas that you've come up against when exploring the topic with leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing I was talking to you, before we came on, is that, often we get to the pointy end of the conversation and it's like, oh, no, I can't take that one step further. And it kind of just stops there. But it's about just to go moving forward. We're going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes all the time in conversations, but it's about just doing that anyway, feeling the fear, and just be mindful though when you are in conversations with people that, if you're asking something, do I need to ask that? Like, it's like, if you don't, then maybe don't, or if you can find out another way, find that out some other way. And really, like I remember I shared an experience with you when my baby was coming along, and I was on the aircraft and went up to the flight deck, and the captain, first officer up there, and the first officer said to me, "Oh, Jose, you're having a baby. Well, awesome. Does your wife fly?" I was like, "No, don't have a wife." "Oh, what does your girlfriend do?" "I'm gay." And he's like, "Oh, how are you having a baby then?" And I was like, okay, here we are again. Here we go again. And often that's me. The person that's going through the thing is the educator, and it's exhausting. And so I sat there thinking, oh my gosh, I've only come up here to take your hot drink orders, and here I am having this conversation. Anyway, I turned to the captain, who was a beautiful ally, a really senior captain, wonderful man, who I had conversations with previously, and he was across what was going on. He looked at me as if to say, I got this one, mate. So I kind of sat there, and he said to the first officer, "So you've got children?" He goes, "Yeah, I've got 3 kids." He goes, "So when your children were coming along, did anyone ask you, how did your wife conceive? How did she get pregnant?" He's like, "No, why would anyone ask me that?" "No, absolutely not." And the captain's like, "Well, I understand you're curious here, and I understand your curiosity. That's normal. But I also want to understand how you feel that you've arrived at this place to be able to just ask that of Jose. If you don't actually think that you'd be okay for someone to ask you that." And the first officer sat there and he goes, "No, yeah, you're right." As I was saying it, I thought to myself, why am I asking that for? That's a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway because it's going to throw a blanket over the situation to kind of make it a little bit better for me. But he said, "Look, I'll be honest, I'm just a bit uncomfortable. I don't know anyone that's been through this. I don't know what to say." And so I just said that. So if he had arrived at that earlier in the conversation and just said to me, "Hey, wow, I don't know what to say. I don't know anyone that's been through this. Would you mind if I had a conversation with you around this?" I'd be like, "Yeah, let me go get a coffee. Let's chat away." But we're just launching in like that. That's not the way to do it. So it's about just hearing yourself in the conversation and having that empathy and respect for someone and allowing them to guide the conversation. Yeah, be curious, ask and support someone. But it's all the intentions behind it as well. It's like, just why are you having the conversation? Why are you asking that? And if your answer is not a good reason, then maybe just back away and not go through with it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good example. And I loved what you talked about with them being educators, because what I'm hearing then too is there's actually a lot of bricks that they are carrying, the rainbow communities, on a day-to-day between educating people and negotiating or deciding whether they're going to have those conversations. And I know you and I talked about even bathrooms, for example, and making this, it's like this constant decision that perhaps others don't have to come up against some of those barriers. So again, what are some of those things that you see every day?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, I go into some places and, some people that aren't in the rainbow communities will go, "Well, why do they need special treatment? We treat everyone here the same. Everyone's welcome here." And it's like, well, actually, no, they're not, because, you don't have all gender facilities here. So someone that wants to transition here that may not want to use a male or female toilet, are they included there? If someone that's visiting a site is transgender or non-binary and they want to go to the restroom and there's not an all, are they welcome there? And it's like policies in place, Well, no, this here is like, the mother or the mother's partner is entitled to parental leave, which for me was the problem, because the mother and the partner, I am also a parent, but I'm not the partner of the mother. And so I wasn't included in that policy. So, is everyone welcome here? Is everyone included? And just all these little things that are in an organisation around, policies and documents and facilities, all that. It's like having a rainbow lens again across all that. And, with the facilities, we don't expect organisations to bang down walls and, put them up, but just be mindful going forward with a new space. Hey, it's important to have this in place for people. I remember when baby was small and going into one of the Kuru lounges, actually a brand new Kuru lounge, and the change table was on the female toilet. And I was like, where do I change the baby? So I had to change his nappy in the play area with all the other kids. And often that's what happened when I went out for dinner or to a cafe. Change table was on the female toilet because mum's changed the nappy. It's like, well, no, dad's changed nappies too, as I know Rob knows. And so it's just getting out of that binary heteronormative way of thinking to just, really capture everyone and embrace everyone.
Yeah. Well, and that leads nicely into the next question, which is, so let's go to workplace wellbeing programs themselves that organisations are running. What are some of the things that organisations can do to take that Rainbows community lens and really think, are we being inclusive, and what more can we do?
Yeah, so, a lot of places do things differently, obviously. The education is key, knowledge is power, and sometimes people just don't know. When I run sessions with a room full of 15, middle-aged engineers, they haven't spoken about someone that's transgender or someone that's pansexual or, gender fluid. And so it's really interesting. Oftentimes they're the ones that have most questions. They're like, we never talked about this before. So it's just, breaking down those barriers, those myths, helping people be less uncomfortable in situations. Yeah, just really having an internal network for those that identify with being in the rainbow communities, and then really leaning into them to help with things that are happening in an organisation, because they will know they're on the front line, they're on the ground. Because a lot of times you've got someone in HR that's putting together something or whatever, but it's like they don't have any lived experience. Talk to those that are in the rainbow communities at an organisation, for advice on what to do, and then really having that network supported by a senior sponsor within an organisation definitely helps.
Yeah, and I imagine visibility as well. We sort of talked about this earlier, but that visibility of support, of saying that we welcome you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Visibility is really important, and it has to be, again, done authentically. And really just, on days, a lot of organisations they celebrate different days throughout the year for different things, and some do that well and some others don't. Sometimes it's just, email, there's some cupcakes in the lunchroom. Whereas others will be like, hey, we actually got a 30-minute lunch and learn to talk around transgender inclusion day today. Please feel free to come along, and really, really fishing out those days to help people using them to help people really understand what's going on. And, for example, with pronouns being rolled out, some organisations, an email goes out, company-wide, here's pronouns, contact this guy in HR, he'll help you set it up to what are they? What are the pronouns? What's it for? There's no why we're doing it. It's like, and that's the thing is always taking your people with you on the journey, sharing with them at every point what's happening, so that especially with this Rainbow Tick certification, they get an email going, we're on the Rainbow Tick program, and then 12 months later we got certified, and everyone's like, huh? What happened? How did it happen? No, take your people through it. Tell them what's happening all the way through it, and all the new things that you're implementing by way of policy or different things, and celebrate that at each point.
Because I can see there'd be a danger of tokenism almost, isn't there? Of going, we ticked that box, we're done now.
Yeah, that's right. It's been very, and places and organisations are very mindful of that, and not to do that. And it doesn't happen that often, hardly at all, really. But there is fear from organisations that they will be seen that will be seen in that light. And I just assure them no, because often those that are in the rainbow communities that are in their organisation, they look to these visible signs or allies. They look to that to feel supported and be able to and feel safe in a workplace. So yeah, do that. It's not tokenistic, but do it in a way that's not, find your way to do that. And it doesn't have to be a floor to ceiling rainbow flag behind the desk at Denton's Kensington Swan. It could be just a tiny little placard in your all gender facilities in your reception area that talk to, hey, you're currently in an all-gender facility and this is why you are. Just a couple of lines. That there will just send massive positive signals to those that are in the rainbow communities that work there, all those that join. It doesn't have to be a big flag or a unicorn. There's lots of little ways to signal this inclusion.
And I love that the sign on the bottom, that's just so powerful. I'd love to hear some of the other case studies or things that you've seen that you think that is such a cool idea. Someone's really, really taken it and mastered ways of communication.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing too that I encourage the organisations that I work with to find their thing. They would have something unique to them that they could do in this rainbow diversity inclusion here in Aotearoa. And, for example, the architecture firm, for them, with builds, interior design, their thing now is that straight off the bat, all gender facilities. And, the client will be like, why? This is why you've got to have them. And actually, it's going to be cheaper if you do it. But, that's their thing, to really create interior spaces that are inclusive, and everything they're doing with the design and the build, it's with a rainbow lens, which they've never done before. So that's their thing. And they can actually educate every new client that comes, into their business. Another organisation, public speaking people there. And so their thing is they're going into schools and that have rainbow youth groups and just talking and supporting them around, hang in there. It's tough right now as a young kid, but it's going to get better. And, I'm a gay CEO and you can do it too. And so using that platform to support. So just finding something that they can do to really make a big impact that's unique to their organisation is it's what I encourage. And lots of places are doing really, really well.
I can imagine having a role model like that. A CEO must just be, for young people, must just be gold.
Yeah, totally. And she's had, she's amazing. And I really, for this particular CEO, I really I'm trying to encourage her to share her story with other senior leadership teams. So I work with a lot of, these senior leadership teams, and they're like, we're very male, pale and stale. It's kind of been like that for 100 years. How do we change that? And I said, well, you change that. I mean, hire someone in there that isn't male, pale and stale. I mean, maybe just give them a chance, and if they fit, let them do it. It's like, if you're just going to continually, bring the same people into the same positions or, into an organisation, it's going to stay the same. You have to change that. You have to diversify how you're recruiting or doing things internally.
Yeah, and you can see, gosh, what a difference that would make. I mean, I come back to the architecture firm. It's just such a great example of how A, that's changed the workforce, and then B, that's actually changed the work that they do, which will then have a ripple effect on to the communities that come in through the doors of those buildings. That's so cool.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what it's all about with the rainbow tickets. We're just trying to create not just in their space, but just when it goes out to their their stakeholders or their clients or their customers, and it's just to build this rainbow diversity inclusion throughout Aotearoa. And we are really lucky here. I mean, New Zealand is really a fantastic place to be as someone that's in the rainbow communities. Having travelled for many years to most places in the world, it's a real blessing to be here. I feel safe here. A lot of places I visited felt very unsafe and had to hide 100% of who I was for fear of being arrested or killed. Whereas here, we're doing a fantastic job. And I mean, there's still work to be done. There always is. But I think we are in a really, 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 really great place. And I mean, it probably helps when you've got a prime minister that preaches kindness. I think we're doing really, really well in the space in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so I'm sure everyone in listening into this would want to be an ally, either is already an ally or would like to be an ally and a supporter in the workplace. So what are some of the things that as HR, as wellbeing people, we can do to keep facilitating this conversation and keep that rainbow lens on our wellbeing programs?
Definitely. So, I mean, I guess if you're in an organization, just, finding out if there is an internal pride network or whatever it's called there, and reaching out to them and saying, hey, look, how can I support you in my role? Is there anything that I can do? And because I know when I was in that position, when people came, I was like, yes, this is great, because you kind of feel like you're just kind of doing it all on your own. And when there are things that happen, showing up. I mean, it made my day when I had events at New Zealand for the Pride Network, and people walked through the door, and I was like, wow, you're here. Cool. Oh, that's my manager. Wow, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, there's just showing up, just being there. You don't have to say anything, but just that visibility is awesome for those in the rainbow communities. And just, education is just, upskilling around rainbow education. If your workplace offers that, just taking advantage of that. There's lots of resources online, on days where there is different days throughout the year, just really fleshing out that education around what those days are, and just, being aware that, even though for example, if you are heterosexual, that, you don't take for granted that everyone else enjoys that workplace the same way you do, because, often that may not be the case.
I think that's such a critical insight, really, that, isn't it? That your experience may be different to other people's, and there's these other lenses that people come to work, when they're there, and so it's kind of breaking them down, isn't it, and making it a really accessible, safe place for everyone to be their whole selves at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got another client where there's a lady that's worked at the organisation for over 30 years, and she is a lesbian and has been married for many years to her beautiful wife, and has still not told anyone at work, but she just doesn't feel safe enough to do that. And so, goes to work during the week, filters, exhausted by the end of the week, gets up the courage to go back to work on Monday morning. And it's like, that shouldn't be happening for someone. It's like, that's horrible, especially a career that long. But, it's at the end of the day, like I said, there's a lot that we hear and that we we could dive into, but it just always comes back to that little bit of extra empathy, respect for people. And, I shared that with you about the Oprah story, and I love that, she said she's interviewed all these fantastic people, Barack Obama, Beyonce Knowles, and every time the camera's turned off and the microphone's turned off, everyone leans into her and says, did I do okay? Was it okay? And she'd be like, what do you mean, Barack? You've changed the world, mate. But everyone says that. Did I do okay? Was I okay? And she learned very early on in her career that is it. Bottom line for everyone. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Does anything I do mean anything to you? And that is it. And for me, with that experience with the GM of Cabin Crew, after 20 years, I felt seen, I felt heard, and I actually felt understood for the first time. And it's unfortunate that happened for me at 20 years. We want that to happen for someone in the first 20 days of their career. We want them to be in that space straight away so that they're turning up. If I had that experience, 20 years earlier, I may have heck knows what would have happened. I mean, but just creating that inclusive, safe space for someone, and signaling that even before they join, that's going to happen when you come here.
Thanks again for listening today. It's been great to have you along. If you're keen to join the Revolutionaries of Wellbeing, head to Row Wellbeing, that's ROW Wellbeing.com, and follow the links to sign up. If you're in our community, thanks again, and we look forward to catching up with you really soon.